Hi everyone, welcome back to Lifting the Lamp. The purpose of this video is for me to share a few techniques that I have used in my practice of pratyahara, withdrawal from the mind and from the senses, in my Raja Yoga practice. But they're also techniques which will be helpful to you if you're involved in any kind of meditation practice, whether that's of the Buddhist variety or any other variety of meditation practice. And the techniques that I'm speaking of, there's two techniques I'm going to share which I've developed to help with the stage of a meditation practice where it's necessary to still the mind and disconnect from thought. And I'm also going to talk a little bit about mantras. So if you've watched my previous video about pratyahara, which I will link below, you'll recall that I spoke about the difficulty of stilling the mind, of stilling thought and gaining control over the mind. And it can be a long and arduous process trying to get that control, trying to cultivate that stillness. But there are a few things that you can do to help you to do that more easily. And in my own pratyahara practice, I found that I could trick the mind a little bit by doing a couple of things. One of those things was to think about nothing. We have a concept of nothing in our minds. And so we can hold in our imagination this idea of nothingness. We can visualize an empty void. It's not quite the same as not thinking at all. But when you think about nothingness, it makes the mind do two things. First of all, it breaks the mind out of its usual routine and its usual pattern of a chain of thoughts about worldly things, about problems and solutions, and obsessing over things in a categorical and narrative type of a way. It makes the mind think about something that is quite different to that state of being, that state of thinking. And the second thing that thinking about nothing does is it prepares the mind for the experience of not thinking at all, which is the ultimate goal of pratyahara and of meditation. But for the mind is not used to not thinking. It can't comprehend not thinking, but it can comprehend nothing. And so by focusing on nothing, it becomes like a stepping stone for the mind to more easily approach the notion of stopping altogether and acclimatizing to the process of not thinking at all. The second technique that I've found to be quite useful in getting the mind to stop thinking quite so much is in the derailing of thought. So there have been times in my pratyahara practice where I had so much thought going on in my head and it was causing such a distraction that I would actually hijack the thought and take the thought in a different direction. You can let thoughts unfold unconsciously, involuntarily, or you can let thought occur consciously and voluntarily. And you can use your willpower and your awareness to push a thought in a different direction so that you are narrating the story that your mind is telling you rather than your mind deciding what the story is. So what I would often do in my pratyahara practice is if I had a line of thought of something very pedestrian, I would hijack the thought, I would take control of the train of thought, and I would push it in a direction that was completely ridiculous, completely nonsensical or non-linear, and I would change the thought and I would change the story into a series of completely random thoughts. Or better yet, I would see that thought dissolving and dissipating into nothing. And by interrupting thought in that way, it can be very useful, because one thing that keeps the wheel of thought spinning is the fact that the mind is able to weave narratives, and it does that by creating thought associations and connecting the dots between thoughts about different things that are stored in your memory. And if you can make thought, instead of connect to another node in your memory, make it go off into nothing, then suddenly thought has nowhere else to go. And then that is a way that you can start to break up the constancy of the thought narrative, which ultimately will prepare us for breaking up thought in different ways, such as having gaps in thought in more advanced pratyahara practice and so forth. And I found that over time, using those two techniques, I was able to really subdue thought considerably and advance faster in my pratyahara practice. The other practice that I want to touch on today is that of mantras. So, what happens when you're engaging in the practice of mantras is that you take a very simple series of words or sounds and you mentally repeat them over and over again, and you continue that until it becomes almost automatic and you begin to enter a trance-like state. And when you first begin to practice mantras in a particular setting, at first the mantra will be competing with other thoughts. But as time goes on, as you persist in the mantra and it remains where other thoughts pass away, and as it becomes more and more intense in consciousness, what you'll find is that the mantra actually drowns out all other thought, and it compels the consciousness to focus only on the mantra. And this can be useful in pratyahara because the goal is to stop thought and to subdue thought. And so mantra is a tool that enables us to do that. Of course, the mantra itself is a thought, and so there will be one thought left. But it does serve to disempower those other thoughts and make it more difficult to assert themselves. And it's also good preparation for the practice of dharana, where you will be required in Raja Yoga to focus on a single thought and become absorbed in it. So those are the practices I would recommend if you want to accelerate the progress of your pratyahara practice. They've certainly worked for me. And best of luck with your practice. If you've had some experience with pratyahara, please share your experiences in the comments below. If you've had experiences with other kinds of meditation where you've used mantra or visualization to aid you, please share in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe. Thank you again for listening, and I'll see you next time for my video on dharana.